whole lot of fun. So now that people are hearing this or watching this, however they're consuming it, and they're thinking that Mary Kole, she sounds on the ball. I want to get her to redo my manuscript and make me a superstar. What type of clients are you looking for? I know obviously you're predominantly looking for children's book authors of some kind, although you work with adult authors now as well, don't you?
Yeah, I do. So I would say my balance, because my branding as a person has been heavily in children's books with Kidlit and all of the work that I've done as a children's agent. But I would say my balance of client is about 70% children's, and split pretty evenly. I do a lot of picture books, but so I have my picture books, then I have middle grade and young adult primarily. I have the oddball early reader chapter book clients. Those can be tough markets. So I just see fewer people trying to debut there. And then the 30% I do, I've been doing a lot of memoir. So I do a lot of adult fiction, but I am just so jazzed about memoir right now because it's something that I love to read. Because I work so heavily in children's books, I don't tend to read children's books for a lot of pleasure. I tend to read like nonfiction, like sociology, psychology type of books because they're like completely different from what I work on. And then I tend to read a lot of memoir because the narrative style is very, very different from fiction, but fictional principles still apply because you're still talking about character, you're still talking about plot. It's just fashioned from the events of a real person's life. Anyway, so I've been working on a lot of memoir recently and just like getting into these life stories that have been so fascinating and like trying to figure out, okay, how do we take this from I am telling my life story to I am telling my life story to an audience, and how do I hook that audience in, and how might we use some fiction principles to that? So anyway, I love my memoirs. I've done like 7 or 8 memoirs this year. And so yeah, long story short, I do a lot of children's books. I love them. They are always going to be my heart, my bread and butter. I work with adult meaning not erotic necessarily. I have worked on erotica, but that's just a funny little phrasing that we use in the children's book world to mean non-children's. So I do have my kind of growing number of non-children's clients as well.
Though I think every author should write at least one erotic tale. Don't publish it. I've got one. You're never going to see it. It's not publishable. But just to stretch those muscles and to try that out. Well, one thing I saw on your website is you offer both in-depth edits as well as a quick phone conversation. I think about 30 minutes was the time offered. So what's the difference that a writer can expect between those two services?
Yes. So most of my services are written. I love doing written services. I love getting my hands dirty and getting into the sentences, the images on the page. I'm able to give a lot more kind of concrete, in-depth feedback with a written edit. But that being said, it's a completely different process to do an overview. And I have 2 overview options that I do on the phone. One is a 30-minute consult. You can send me up to 10 pages of material, questions, a query letter, anything that makes up 10 double-spaced pages. And then we just talk about it. You don't get written notes, but we have more of a big picture conversation. And I offer the same in an hour-long format for a novel. I quickly read your novel and then I offer as much feedback as possible. Again, not written. But usually those are the types of projects where the writer is very close to submission, or they have a very specific question that we can sort of address in a big picture, bird's eye view type of format. So you're not really getting feedback as much on the page unless something really jumps out to me. But then we can talk about like, is this really paranormal romance, or is this maybe more magical realism? You know, we can kind of get into conversations of how do I pitch this, or what category am I in? Is this YA or is this more adult? Can I aim for a crossover novel right off the bat? You know, those kind of questions that speak more to category and where you fit in. And so I really like having those conversations because I get into more a strategic mindset. And it's a nice way to break up the kind of on the page editing that I do most of the day And then what I tend to attract more with that service are people who are just thinking about working on a project, and also authors who are kind of mid-career. Maybe they're having issues with their literary agent, or they have two projects that they're trying to choose between for their next project. And before they dive in, they'd really like some outside feedback. So it's really good for that. And then for just writers who have an idea, who've never maybe written anything, those are my favorite phone calls, because they're like, can you take a peek at what I'm doing? Am I doing something? Do I have a thing? And what is this thing? And so the 10 pages or the overview is really helpful there too, because then I can set them more confidently on their path, if that makes sense. Whereas before, they just maybe had an idea and didn't know what it was.